Hey, welcome back, and thanks for tuning in to Recruiting Insight. This is the place to be if you want to connect with the most successful recruiters, hiring managers, and innovators in the real estate industry. Hey, it's a great day to recruit, and we have Lisa Chinatti in the virtual house this morning. Now, Lisa is the person that the big real estate portals have nicknamed the Beast of the Northeast, and today you're going to find out why. Lisa and her business partner, Jason Posnick, were pioneers in the mega team movement that has swept across the real estate industry. Now, what's a mega team? Well, it's a team that's so big it makes most brokerages look small, and yet it still operates like a nimble, tight-knit crew that can pivot quickly and capture new opportunities. Today, Lisa is going to share her unique perspective on what it's like to both recruit and retain agents in this fast-paced team environment. Nothing's easy when it comes to recruiting talent. We all know that. But Lisa and Jason have achieved so much in this arena, you will save yourself a bunch of time and a bunch of headaches if you can learn from what they're doing. All right. Hey, good morning, Lisa. Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate you jumping on the podcast. I know many of our listeners are super excited about hearing your story about what you're doing in the team world. So just a quick story. You and I have known each other for a few years, just because we've done some business together. But in February, I had the opportunity to come out and see you and your team in person. Saw this great new facility that you just put together, which was awesome. And then got to spend the whole day with not only you but 50 of your friends. Who are also team leaders. And I'm like, wow, she has a lot of friends, but also some really cool friends. I was amazed by what I learned that day. I think I had like 10 or 12 pages of notes, and boy, it was just an amazing mastermind day. So you were super generous in how you did that. So with that, let's talk a little about. Can you tell? I know many of our listeners have heard of you through some different things that you've done, but can you tell us a little about your how you got into this, how you got into running a big team?
Yeah, totally. Well, first, thanks for having me. So my journey is probably similar to some, and then maybe slightly different. I got into real estate for the first time in 2004. I got my license when my oldest daughter had just been born, and being a stay-at-home mom was maybe my jam, maybe not my jam.
Okay.
From 2004 to 2006, I didn't sell any homes. And in 2006, I let my license expire and figured real estate wasn't my thing. And fast forward to 2010, I got my real estate license again.
Okay.
And I sold part-time from 2010 to 2014. 1 to 2 houses a year, kind of whatever, I picked up through friends or family or an open house here and there. 2015, I got a little bit more serious and I sold 8 houses, which is pretty good by, most standards. And then 2016, it was kind of the year to get serious and decide whether I was all in or it was time to be all out and figure out a different journey for myself. So made some strategic decisions, started lead genning with Zillow, started some diving into Google pay-per-click, geographic farming, and that kind of stuff. 2016, I sold 82 homes as a solo agent, which is a lot for a solo agent to produce. And at the end of 2016, I was kind of at the point where looking at going forward and growing more, I was at the max of what I could do on my own, right? Okay. There's not much more that you can really do and still have balance in a life. And so forming a team kind of seemed like the next best step in the, evolution of what went on. And so I started the first version of the team in 2017. Okay. I made a lot of mistakes. We made some financial mistakes. I didn't get my license to run a team, so leadership skills weren't my forte, kind of figured it all out. Didn't come naturally. And everything fell apart in August of 2017. And I lost a lot of money through 2017. Okay. And then I was at the point where it was either, again, kind of faced this crossroads where it was like, do I spend the time and the effort to figure out how to become successful and how to make it, or do I just kind of go back to being a solo agent? Right. And decided that I liked it enough to put some time and effort in. But it's also, I think, where my passion for recruiting started, because I realized that in a lot of ways, there's safety in numbers, right? And it's insulating for the company, right? When agents leave, which they do no matter what team or brokerage we're at,
right?
They're always going to leave, and we can kind of protect things by having a bigger base. And so started over in going into 2018, and then it just kept growing and growing and growing. In 2019, it no longer made sense to house the team under a brokerage anymore. So we opened on our own as an independent brokerage, and then growing and growing and growing, and here we are today.
Okay. So at the time, and we'll get into some of where you're at today, but at the time, 2016, 17, and when you're making these decisions about how to become a team, were there a lot of other teams around that you could use as a guide, or was this kind of you and a bunch of other people trying to figure it out all together?
You know, teams, thinking back, teams they were there, but they weren't what they are today. I would say that, 2016, 2017, even 2018, I think we think of a big team at that point was 10 to 15 people, right? I remember one of the reasons that we left Keller Williams was that the OP of the office that we were under didn't support growth past a certain size.
Gotcha.
It was viewed as risky, and it was viewed as too much, if you will. And I think that was the norm in our marketplace. Even looking at Mass and New Hampshire today, we are the biggest team in market, both in agent count, in volume, and in units. So, there weren't a ton of people to learn from by watching. Our coaches were pivotal in kind of helping us figure it out.
Right.
Not on site, not locally.
Okay. So today, so you obviously grown this over time. I mean, nothing just happens instantly. It's something that you're learning, and it wasn't a straight path up. So how many agents today? How big is the team currently?
So we're right around 100 agents and 24 staff members.
Okay. So I think a lot of even a brokerage could see that as a little scary, right? I mean, this looks like a competitor to me, that's sitting inside of my company. So I could certainly see why there might be some concerns there. So when you look at from a team perspective, because when we think about what is a brokerage versus what is a team, so technically, I guess you're underneath your own brokerage now. How would you differentiate those two? How do you differentiate team versus a brokerage?
So what's interesting is in my world, there's a phrase that's kind of come up lately, a teamerage, which is I think we're owning it and kind of saying that that's our identity. So we are a brokerage run mostly as a team. And in that, almost everybody here takes company-generated leads, right? So the leads become one aspect of it. We provide a high level of support for all of them in terms of transaction management, photography and marketing support for the entire company. And then the training is above what you would find for training at a traditional brokerage as well. Okay.
So let's push on that a little bit. I want to push down the recruiting path today, just obviously for what we're going to talk about. So one of the unique parts of a team is that there's a very structured system. It seems that you have. You're hiring people and putting them into a system, where a brokerage we're going to hire people, and there may be 10 different ways people do stuff here. But you have, you start here and you get into the system. Is that a correct understanding?
100%. Yeah. And it's a successful system, right? We know it works.
Okay. So, is when you tell me a little more about that. So when someone comes into the system, so do you have very specific training that you give them, or is there a timeline or a process that people go through?
Yep. So once we decide that somebody's the right fit for us and they decide that we're the right fit for them, we go into a 2-week onboarding period.
Okay.
That first period, the first week is kind of the most structured part. And the full 2 weeks are in office here in Chelmsford with our staff. And there's a structure to every single day, learning the systems, meeting the support staff, understanding the basics of, how to use our systems, how to write an offer, understanding the legalities of it, learning the scripting, right? The basic scripting and all that goes into that. And it kind of gets culminated on the fourth day when we actually start handing those brand new agents brand new leads, right?
Okay.
Our goal through this system is to get every single agent who onboards with us to get their first accepted offer in 30 days or less.
Okay.
Because we know that agents, it's a commission only job, right? So
Yeah.
we have a very finite amount of time to get them income before they may not be able to remain in the industry long term.
Right. So I think this is for a lot of brokerages, particularly that mentality is going to blow their mind. Okay. So this idea that, hey, I want to be able to get this person and start working leads on day 4, and I want them to have a closed transaction on day 30 is not something most people even can conceptualize. So let's go a little further than that. So what expectations do you have of someone who's on the team? Once they're up and running a little bit, is there a certain monthly expectation in number of closings you expect?
So our goal is to get everybody to about 2 closings per month. It's what all of our staff is kind of aiming for in terms of marketing, generating enough leads to get each agent into that part, in terms of the trainers giving the correct training to drive the agents to that spot, from the support staff giving the agents enough support to take off the stuff off their plate so that they can do what they do best. Mm-hmm. And then in terms of expectations around time in office, we walk a fine line. They're 1099, so we can't
Mm-hmm.
dictate that they're in the office for, set periods of time. But what we do say is we put standards in place around our leads, right? Okay. If you want leads, we expect that you're going to attend a certain number of trainings. We expect that you're going to cover a certain number of open houses. Mm-hmm. We expect that you're going to attend our weekly team meeting, and you can do it in person or on Zoom, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Kind of made a pivot to understand that the in-person stuff isn't what everybody wants, but not everybody wants Zoom either.
Right.
We've tried to give a pivot to allow that to happen. We have standards around what their database needs to look like, how many one-on-ones they have to sit with their sales manager to go through their database and audit leads and make sure that they're hitting all of the steps and making the phone calls and having the conversations to move our leads down the funnel.
Okay. So obviously everyone's not going to hit these metrics. I mean, this business is not for everybody, right? So some people, even with your best intentions with hiring, you step in and you want to get people going and get people the right way. So is your philosophy more, hey, we need people to fit the system and get moving pretty quickly, or they need to do something else? Or is it like, hey, I'm willing to slow down a little bit with somebody that takes more time and kind of work them in slowly? What's your thoughts on that?
So for the right person, we'll slow it down and work them in at the level that they want. So and that's changed, right? If you look back to 2018, 2019, I held a hard line on if you didn't sell X number of houses, you weren't the right fit for us. But as I've matured as a leader and a business owner, one of the realizations that we had is, and this is, purely business, and it's tough because you never want people in the company to really hear this side of it, but there's a certain point where an agent is profitable for the company.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
And as long as an agent is going to hit the point where they're not costing us money in terms of systems and support and the resources that they're sucking up, and when they're good for culture, right? Mm-hmm. If they're coming in and they're positive and they're supporting their teammates and doing all of the things that make them a part of the team, I'm never going to let a good person go, right? Yeah. If, however, you're somebody who's not, closing, the number for us where it really becomes profitable is about 10 deals a year, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. And so if you're not going to close 10 deals a year and you're not going to come into the office and we're never going to see your face except when you need something, that might be the agent where we're having a little bit of a conversation about whether we are the right fit for you and you for us.
Yeah.
Or if you're, just super negative and not great for culture, from being in our office, we're a little bit wacky, right?
Yeah.
Loud and
you have fun there.
Right. And if you can fit into that and, make it so that other people want to come into the office and work, then who am I to tell you that you can't, right?
Yeah, but I get it. It's a business, and you only have so much resources, and you only have so much time, and so there has to be at some point, a decision being made, right, as a business owner of, hey, this is a fit or it's not. And I do think the team mentality. I think one of another metaphor around it is, like a sports team, everyone's not going to make the team, right? We can't have everybody on the team. We need people who are going to perform and contribute and be important. So let's pivot a little bit. Well, just one other question on how many people do you hire typically in a month? What's a typical month for you?
What we would like it to be and what it actually ends up being are two very different numbers. So our goal is to hire 12. Where we realistically fall is somewhere in the 5 to 6 range right now.
Okay. And I know from our discussions earlier, there's a number of different paths that you get agents from. You're primarily hiring new agents, right? Because you want to train them quickly. Do you ever hire experienced agents?
We do. And it's, I think we're kind of looking at the market now and saying that there might be a really great opportunity over the next 6 months to make an even bigger pivot into hiring existing agents. Historically, it's probably been 25% of our hires have been existing agents and 75% have been brand new, never sold a house. And I suspect over the next 6 months, we'll see it swing to 50-50 is my gut.
Okay. And then, so with experienced agents, if I remember from when we talked in February, you still are on the newer side of that process. Someone in a year or 2 years or having is there some standards there you kind of look at?
Yeah. So historically, we found that those that do the best here are less than 3 years in the business and less than 10 closed sales lifetime.
Okay.
And part of it was because before this year, our commission structure was very different. We were a straight 50-50, and we've made a pivot going into 2022 that's changed our commission structure. But anybody who was coming with a book of business, right, 10 closings over a year to 3 years is decent. They didn't want to give up 50% the commission on that. So we've made a pivot that will hopefully start to attract folks within that. But because of the way that we work, because of our expectations, and because 80% of closed business comes from company leads, finding people who are okay working within our system and using our scripts and our processes that we know work is super important.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. And I do agree with you. I think there is a pivot coming with experienced agents. A lot of people who are at that below 10 transactions are going to be looking for answers here pretty soon because it won't be as easy. So, well, let's pivot to retention a little bit. Certainly there's some attrition that happens over time. There is in every single brokerage, so when someone leaves the company, do you find that we talked already? It's about sometimes it's not a fit early in the process, but if someone leaves later in the process, what's going on there typically, and how do you retain them when they get to that 2-3 year point?
Great question. So we've lost them, and we believe firmly, and I don't know if we talked about it in February when you were here, but I believe that agents don't leave the company, they leave the leader. And so I take it as a personal fail on my part and on the part of my leadership team that we missed a mark, right? And it's typically that somebody out relationshiped me in my own office, right? Somebody made an agent feel more special than I made them feel or than my staff made them feel. And so that's I, without a doubt, still take it personally and look at it as a way that we could be better. And so that's been my biggest focus for 2022 is spending most of my time now that I don't sell houses, right? And I'm not in a lot of the day-to-day. So my role has really become retention focused. So for us, it's little things, right? It's celebrating birthdays. It's remembering the big milestones. It's not necessarily celebrating production, which I think was one of the mistakes that we made through 2020 and 2021, even 2019, where we would celebrate accepted offers and closings. And now we have an award every month called the Culture Commander, the person who most embodies the company culture by supporting others and doing the right things, right? We celebrate anniversaries with crazy fun little gifts that are, uniquely us. For birthdays, we have a company that puts these giant 30-foot yard signs in everybody's front yards. So that if their friends and family drive by, everybody knows it's their birthday. it's much more time for me in small group settings and making sure that I get out of my office and I spend time on the sales floor and not, talking about transactions or that kind of stuff, but just really connecting with people on a human level and getting to know them and what's important to them. And I don't know, it's been a fascinating pivot. Fascinating pivot.
And I can see you processing it even as we're talking here, and I did in February as well, because it's a very different mentality from being an agent that does 80 transactions. I mean, everything's about transaction, or even running a 10-person team. You're like, hey, there's numbers here that have to be done, and it's a pivot to that personal side. Well, let's talk. If someone does leave the team, do they typically go to another team, or do they go to a brokerage, or do they get out of the business, or what happens?
The typical path, we follow it closely, as I'm sure you can imagine. So we typically, historically, would lose them when they got to the point where they were selling about 40 homes a year. And this goes to one of the things that I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago with the change in our commission splits. And I think that there was this interesting kind of dynamic going on where, like I said, 80% of closed business year over year, and it's been solid since the company has started, has come from company-generated leads. Okay. But when an agent gets to the point where they are selling 40 homes a year, one of the things that we weren't great about was pointing out that realistically that percentage actually remained the same, right? Oh, wow. They might have had a small dip down to where 70% of their business was company leads and they were self-generating 30% as opposed to self-generating 20%. But they, in their minds, were generating 60% or 70%. The numbers were reversed, right? Yeah. So other brokers would call them and be, hey, you're selling 40 houses a year. Chinatti's only paying you a 50-50. We're going to give you, insert the moon, right? Or whatever. And so we were losing really great agents who actually benefited from the company because our commission splits weren't competitive and because we weren't constantly pointing out the value of what we brought to the table. We were assuming that everybody saw that. So we've made a switch so that we comp a little bit differently, which I think is going to help with retention. And so when we watched what was happening, we would find that these agents would leave and all of a sudden their production would go from 40 homes a year to 12 homes a year. Right. And then out of those 12, they were still paying referral fees back to us on 4 or 5 of those deals because they were leads that they acquired while they were here that they continued to close out in the next 12-month period of time. And then year 2, their business would actually go down even a little bit further. Wow. So really interesting study. We had one agent who slayed it with us and closed 26 homes. Right. In his last year with us, it was his 3rd year with us, closed 26 homes, got frustrated at being held to standards and left us and went to another brokerage and actually sold 1 home. And that home came from our company generated leads over the next 6 months. After that 6-month period of time finished, he jumped that brokerage and went to another brokerage where he sold no homes since leaving. And his license just came up for renewal and he didn't renew. Wow. And sadly, that's been repeated a couple of times. Most tend to stay in. They drop down to more of a part-time kind of agent. Right. But it's a grind, right? Selling 40 houses a year is not what everybody wants to do. Right. Yeah. So do you find that there's a time where a certain number of people just get burned out on this, or is it just, I mean, that's gotta be, at that 2-3 year point, it's gotta be tough to really figure, maybe that's what you're working on still. Yeah, I think, it's, as we talk about it in the office, like that is my driving force for this year, is to figure out how do we keep our agents motivated and incented and take away some of that stress so that they don't feel that burnout. And so that I think one of the other things becomes, what's the growth path? Right? As humans, we all want to know that we're growing, right? Whether it's in income or whether it's in title or whether it's in position or whatever it is. And I think we failed over the past couple of years to put in place that growth trajectory, and we're working on it now.
Yeah, no, I think that is so key, and it's people have to see themselves growing over time, and not being, hey, I'm going to do this forever. I'm going to be here 10 years, still doing the exact same thing. I think it's people want to see a horizon, and that's important. Well, as we wrap up, you've obviously been a bit of a pioneer in the whole team environment. Where do you see the relationship, or the team oriented sort of models going in the next 5 years? Do you think this is sustainable? Is it going to take over the world? Is it going to what's going to happen here?
I think teams are here to stay. I think we're going to find as an industry, teams are actually going to start to outpace individual agents and brokerages. I think teamerages are going to become the thing, just as we kind of look at what's going on. I think it's funny because I think back to when I got into the industry and when I started buying leads, and everything that I did to build the business, an agent couldn't do today. You can't just go on to Zillow and spend $500 a month to buy leads, right?
Uh-huh.
Zillow is where you can buy them. We're talking $500 per lead up to maybe $2,000 per lead.
Yeah.
Right? And in other markets, they're very flex-based, which are long-term relationships based upon a history of conversion.
Mm-hmm.
You look at realtor.com, which has moved to their market VIP program, which again, you're looking at monthly spends of $50,000 to $250,000 per month to buy leads through that program. You look at things like Google Local Services and Google Pay-per-click, where you're competing against people with budgets like mine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's going to be very difficult to play in that arena. And I think most agents that I know and that we coach and mentor have a sphere that's fairly small. And the amount of time that it takes to build a decent amount of production from within your own sphere of influence is very, very lengthy. And so I think as you look at it, I think we're going to find that some of those smaller producing agents are going to make the hop over to teams or teamerages that can continue to give them leads and opportunities that they can't generate on their own. And I think it's going to be really fascinating to watch what happens with buyer agency commission in general. And whether that remains a part of our industry or not.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and it's fascinating to see it transition and see some of these these barriers start to they weren't there, and then it's like, okay, is there outside capital that can come in, and that's a risky world. I mean, to bring someone in to fund something like that, how do you pick a horse ahead of time that is really going to be able to do this without your level of experience, that kind of thing. So it could be a situation where you can continue to grow. It sounds like in this side of this model for quite a while. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I'm stoked for the next 5 years. Like, I get excited thinking about the opportunity that is lying in front of us, and how many people we're going to be able to impact simply by continuing to do what we already do really well.
Yeah, I talked to one of your peers. Somebody referred me to that was looking at their goal being 1,500 agents on the team. And that's just as a type of that mentality is I think a lot of people are not kind of getting it yet, that's where it's going. So
that's where we're all going. I firmly believe it.
That's awesome, and I hope to be able to watch and to see you grow to that level. That'd be amazing. It really would. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate the time, and I know a lot of our listeners are going to be super excited to hear your story and hear what you're doing, and also the way that you just you're pretty real about the struggles here. This isn't like Easyville and team world, right? I mean, there's a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulties. It takes a lot of perseverance and strength and obstacles and all that. So each of us, for all those that are really doing the hard work of recruiting every day, hopefully we'll take what Lisa was able to communicate today and go make a difference.